Welcome to EmpowerU. I'm Amy Stevens. You may have heard Pastor Steve's podcast where we had a conversation about public policy engagement or civic engagement. You know, COVID changed a lot of things in our community, and this is where the road really exploded in membership and where people began to get engaged. And so Pastor Steve came to me and said, hey, would you consider volunteering to help lead this effort? We have all kinds of views in our church, diverse views. And really, how do we make sense of that? How do we move forward? People are exhausted, a lot of people angry, some just trying to raise their kids. How do we stay engaged? And I'm convinced it's through big, important little things that you and I can do every day. And that's what you're going to hear on these podcasts. You're going to hear from people in the community, school board members. You're going to hear from people that work in the pro-life space. You're going to hear from legislators, people that are going to talk to us about what their lives are really like, what their jobs are really like, and actually how we can make a difference and or support them. And so that is the hope for Pastor Steve. That's the hope that I have, and we look forward to engaging with you. Hi, this is EmpowerU, and I'm Amy Stevens. And today, I want to talk or set the stage for a moment, because when anybody runs for public office, or they're in public office, or you volunteer to serve somewhere, you are always going to have detractors. You're always going to have, if you're a believer and your name is Karen, I'm sorry, but the Karens of the world who are complaining, or why didn't you do this, or why didn't you do it the way we think? And you're going to go through this, and you really have to know why you believe what you believe. If you're voting on something, you have to know why you voted, because you will give an account for it. You have to know what you're doing. But what if it takes a different turn? And sometimes it does. What happens when it becomes personal? What happens? I've been stalked. I was stalked in the legislature. It got very scary to me, because not just for me, and I had a growing son, but for my staff. I mean, it was kind of nuts, and we had state patrol at the ready. My guest today, I wish I had 10 of he and his wife. They are members of this church. If I had 10, we would conquer Colorado. But, there's one, Aaron Salt, and I am just so thankful for you, incredibly. I want our listeners to know, Aaron is a school board member of District 20, which is where my son went to school and went to Air Academy. And his wife, Courtney, also is engaged in education. And the two of them are going to be back on this broadcast, because we are going to talk about the situation of education, parental rights, all of that. But I want to go back to when it becomes personal. And Aaron called me one night, and he'd received a mailer. And we're going to describe what that mailer is, and how very often what was meant for harm can turn for good. And that's the story here. And I want to encourage all of you, because what this podcast is about is the big, important little things that we can do every day, because really life and a lot of other maddening situations are overwhelming. But there are things we can do, and you are a shining example of that. Aaron, thank you and welcome here.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, no, give our audience a bit of your background.
So my wife and I have been in Colorado now for 12 years. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Alabama, Republican, strong conservative, moved out here where I thought we were, about the same. But that's not been the case. I have a master's degree in social work, and so I've always been passionate about education. It's something that I remember years ago. I was early teens. No Child Left Behind came through. We were sitting at dinner with, my parents were youth pastors. We were sitting at dinner with one of their kids who had grown up and had gone on to become a teacher. And I remember sitting at the table, listening in on this conversation that the adults were having about how this lady was being forced to move kids through the system and past them because it reflected poorly on her school, and the administration when kids didn't succeed. So instead of helping encourage them and teaching them and bringing them along to make sure they were achieving what they needed to achieve and learn before moving on to the next grade level, they were being passed to be someone else's problem because they had a quota to meet as far as passing students. And so I remember at an early age, I was very just confused by the nature of education. If this is where we are, this is a long-term problem. And so it's something that I didn't engage in directly, but it was something that was always kind of a passion about, which led me to kind of where I am here. I helped found a charter school that's located inside of District 20 boundaries. I sat on the board there for a little over 4 years. I chaired it for 3.5, and then I moved up to the District 20 board back in 2021.
2021. That's when I came back, and I have to say, okay, I remember I was at a Republican event, and you had your little baby girl. You have 4 children.
Yep.
Give me their ages.
9, 7, 5, and 2.
Okay. She was a little baby. And so Courtney had her in the arms. You were about to give it was at a Republican event. You were about to give your speech and your hello. And I was watching your boys, as little boys are wont to do. But they were in the rocks, teetering. And then someone thought it'd be fun, to throw one. And I was howling because you were as cool as a cucumber. You delivered that speech. And other people were watching the boys. And Courtney was like, she couldn't get up. She couldn't do that. I knew then. I turned to Ron and said, I don't know who he is. I like him. We have to vote for him. That's it. That we have to vote for him. Anyway, you were remarkable. I thought that was great. Your speech was great. Everything was great. But
Thanks.
I remember that. So anyway, you get elected. You get elected to the House, just to get elected to the D20 Board of Education, right?
Yep. And so, I've done education, like I said, sitting on the charter board, very similar work to what we do at the district level. It's just at a larger scale,
right?
Bigger budgets, that sort of thing. And so I knew kind of what I was getting into, or at least I thought I knew what I was getting into. But I underestimated the community that we were in. And, we as a district and as a county are fairly conservative,
right?
Which is why you get conservative leadership.
Right.
Moving in, so the way that our board works is we have a board quote before each board meeting, and it's a quote that any one of the board members can bring. We kind of assign meetings. You bring a quote and have a minute to talk about it.
Right.
And so I brought one from Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
It was a Bible and a newspaper in every house, a good district in every school, all awarded as they merit. Talks about going on into how that is the core of virtue and what we need in our culture and community.
Okay.
I even took a minute to talk about, like, the Bible is the sacred book for my religion, but really you can sub that in for any book, any sacred text, any sort of a moral code that you want, because morality is such a core part of what keeps society moving forward and brings our culture together. Right. And so when we don't have some form of a moral basis, we see a lot of corruption, and we see a lot of issues in our community, and you can see that when you look around our community today. I wanted to take a minute and say, this is not a Christian quote. I mean, Ben Franklin himself wasn't a Christian,
right?
But this is really reflective of needing that moral basis. Mm-hmm. And before we even had our meeting, I got a letter from the Freedom from Religion Foundation sending me a cease and desist order saying, you can't talk about this. This violates the First Amendment right. It didn't. And anyone with common sense understands that that's not what the First Amendment is about.
Right.
I said my quote. We actually had 2 individuals from the Satanic Temple that showed up at our board meeting the following month. They were invited by one of our community members who was not fond of me and my Christian beliefs.
Right.
And so they came. The first gal got up and talked a little bit about the organization. They're a non-religious organization. They believe in rhetoric. They believe in logic and rationale, but they're a non-religious organization. The next gal got up right behind her and said a prayer of some kind. Both of them ended their speeches with "Hail Satan," and we moved on.
I want to stop you there for a sec, because I had been getting calls from people in our congregation about the D20 school board meetings, and they would say there's a group of people who openly profess to be in a satanic church. And even Pastor Liz, told me she went to one of the meetings just to see, because we'd had a number of people who are advocates. Their children are in the district, and just the behavior alone is just unreal. People screaming, people just disrupting meetings. And at first I thought, you have to be joking me here. I mean, I really thought, what has happened in 10 years or since my son had graduated, right? That was 2011. So, I mean, I was first thinking, no. But then Pastor Liz said, no, I was there. I saw it. It's happening. This is really taking place. Now, never mind that the head of that group is the vice chair of the Democratic Party, right? Nothing to see there. Just move along. Don't worry about that. And I just had to say, wow, okay, so this is real, and these people really are kind of, it's really abusive in a way, I'm hearing, on the things they level against you guys, some of you who are of a more conservative belief or believers, right?
You know, the attacks have come, I'll say the overt attacks have come down. We have a lot more decorum at our meetings. We're not getting the disruptions that we were early on.
Yes.
But it's still, and we'll talk about that in a second, that the attacks are still very real and they're becoming even more personal.
Right.
They're not doing it in front of cameras anymore.
Yes. And isn't that sometimes how that works, right? That's how evil works. And it is. So I want to hear about this because when you called me, I literally... Again, I just was speechless. And then you sent me the photo of what was sent to you. And I went, oh my gosh, okay.
So about a month or so ago, I showed up to the board meeting and I had a little brown envelope sitting on my little desk. And so I asked our board secretary, I said, is this something that everyone got or just me? She goes, just you. And I said, okay. So I looked down at it and it was from the Satanic Temple addressed to me at my D20 address.
Okay.
So, all right. So I opened it up, and this is the card that I got. Obviously, some very graphic front here,
right.
A lot of iconography that people are familiar with. But it says thank you, and so I got really confused. I said thank you. I didn't do anything for you.
Right.
So I opened it up, and inside of the card, they thanked me for a donation that was made in my name to the Satanic Temple, to the Sam Alito's mom's Satanic Abortion Clinic in New Mexico. This clinic it's a telehealth clinic where they send medications out. It's a chemical abortion that goes out to these, I'll say, very desperate individuals for and it says in the card, supporting satanic abortion rituals. And so you have this group that's claiming to be non-religious, bringing everything from a place of logic and rationale that is, number one, making fun of one of our Supreme Court justices and the naming of this.
Right.
But on top of that, anytime you talk about a ritual, a rite of some kind, that is inherently religious in nature.
Right.
And so I actually looked at the Satanic Temple's website after that, and they have several rites and rituals that they do through their... Now, the abortion ritual is not one that they listed on their website. So I don't know if they're trying to hide it or not. I mean, they're sending it to me.
Right.
But, yeah. So I kind of laughed for a second when I saw this because, we've had a little bit of back and forth with some of these individuals over the last year. Genesis 50:20 came to mind where... I believe it's with Joseph and, what God intended for evil, or what the enemy intended for evil, God intends for good and can turn to good. And so that was immediately what struck me. And so I went back to my house and, showed my wife, and we automatically were like, we have to do something to reverse this. We're not going to, the initial thought was, well, we could send it to, 5 of the people that are likely the individuals behind this, right?
Right.
But what good is that doing these donations? So what we're actually doing is we're partnering with Save the Storks, an organization here locally, to raise money for they're raising money for a Colorado stork bus.
Yes.
And so this is going to be specifically to Colorado, which is one of the things that I really appreciate. We have some of the most heinous and egregious abortion laws in the country here right now. And so this is a prime time for organizations like the Life Network or Save the Storks to be able to step up and provide prenatal care to mothers that are in really desperate situations and are looking for help. They're looking for answers. And so these stork buses are mobile clinics that they go around and they drive through the cities and they provide this care to these mothers free of charge. And so the fact that we can get one here in Colorado to help fight the egregious laws that we have here was a prime opportunity.
It is. So I know because we had the CEO for Storks on this podcast to talk about really the mobile clinics and what they are doing throughout the United States. But to me, what was so intriguing is how so quickly it was partnered up. Right?
Oh.
What's it called? What do we have your face on it? What are we doing?
Yeah, so we're calling this the His Name campaign because the donation was made in my name, but all glory is in God's name. It's in His name, you know? And so He's the one that turns this, we can't do anything, but through Him, all things are possible. And so we're partnering here. It's the His Name campaign. If you go to savethestorks.org/His Name, you'll see my face, my family that are on there. A little brief story about this, and you'll have a donation link. So
I love it. I love it. I want to really encourage people to, listen, we look at ways, that's what this podcast is about. We look at ways to, what can we do? $5, $10, what can we do? Everything matters. Everything, volunteer, right? Because, Colorado just has passed once again. I mean, the last couple years, just extremely egregious, and it's only going to get worse, right? And so I love that you've turned something so much like this and gone, yeah, okay, thanks, but we're going to move that into something good. Isn't that kind of where we find ourselves right now in this madness of culture? I call I just had finished a book, The Madness of Crowds, right? And by Douglas Murray, and it's great. I mean, it really is the madness because you've actually witnessed that at school board meetings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How has that been? I mean, how has that been for someone who's a believer? And you're not, to my knowledge, the only believer. You have a few of you on the board.
Yeah, we have several of us that are believers on the board. And so it's kind of interesting because I'm the one who attracts most of the religious attention.
Right.
Even though there's others that are religious on the board. A lot of that takes back to the fact that I'm the one who had the quote that talked about the Bible. I came and spoke at a conference in May of last year. That got spread around, and a lot of people didn't like the fact that I got up and spoke at a church because they said, because you're in your official capacity, you're violating the First Amendment. Again, not in my official capacity, not violating First Amendment.
Right.
I'm a citizen just as much as anybody else is.
That's right.
And so the fact that I have to fight for my own rights as a believer in this office with all the spotlight has been honestly one of the most eye-opening things for me, is because I assumed everyone understood sort of the nature of our civic culture and the rights that people have as individual citizens. And being an elected official doesn't change my personal rights.
And you're not paid.
This is a volunteer position.
Exactly.
And I'm here for the kids. I want to make sure that the students have great education. Like I said, from the very beginning of this show, I'm passionate about education. I have been since I was in my teens and trying to figure out a way to make the system better to serve students.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to do here. Going back here, we have this non-religious organization talking about satanic abortion rituals. They just opened their first after-school club in the state of Colorado within the past 3 or 4 months. They have an after-school program, and they only put them at places that have good news clubs or other Christian or sectarian after-school clubs, and they do this to help combat that. So,
and do they say they're satanic? Do they?
They call it the after-school Satan Club is what the club's name is. They talk about the fact that they are non-religious and they don't actually believe in Satan. They just use him as an icon. To say that this organization, or if we just talk about the enemy writ large, right? This is a spiritual battle that we are engaged in. And not just me at the district level, but I mean, each one of us as Christians are engaged in this spiritual battle. You see it at your work, you see it, in your family at times.
Right.
And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're understanding that this is not a battle of flesh and blood. Right. And so when we start looking at this from a higher level, we see that this is a battle against children that has been waged on since the dawn of time.
Right.
When you look back in Genesis at the fall, It was always a woman against Satan. And ever since then, it was an attack on the woman's child, her seed. You see this through a lot of the genocides that have happened throughout history, where it has been focused on children 2 and under. They had that with Moses. They had that with Christ. They were both born into this world of genocide against children. We see that today, where they're trying to, kill these children before they're even born. And then if they can't do that, they're implementing these programs to help try to depress them to a place where they want to kill themselves.
Right. Which they're doing actually a remarkable job.
They are. And it breaks my heart because these are kids that are hurting and they need as much support as they can possibly get. And the enemy sees this as an opportunity and they seize upon it and they just keep piling it on. And so it hurts my heart when I see this type of thing going on, because it's not like the satanic. You guys can send me all the cards you want to. I really don't care. I'm not impressed by any of this. Right. What hurts is the fact that you are getting your claws into these children and these students and causing problems for them when they're at their most vulnerable state.
Yes. I spoke recently to Debbie Chavez, who works with My Faith Votes, and we talked about, I think you say this very well. We have children in the middle between the teacher and their parent, both of who we want to support, right? Teaching, supporting, encouraging. But it's hard when there's an agenda, right? It's why we have people like you on our school boards to say, no. This isn't not only not age appropriate, right? It either sexualizes children, it harms their brain development. We're doing all kinds of things in that arena. And Debbie and I talked, it puts great stress on a child to like their teacher. It's between Miss Sue and what my mother said. And very often, I know you see curriculums. I see them. I used to have to review them. We see curriculums where parents are at the bottom of the totem pole. In other words, go to your trusted counselor. Go to your trusted teacher. Go to your trusted health professional at the school. And then, but if you have to talk, right? Your parents might not understand. So come to us. You're like, wait, what? What? Because the research shows over and over, parents are the number one key on education success.
Absolutely.
So stable households, right? A stable environment. It grieves me on this. And yet, I want to applaud you and the board in D20. Didn't you just have a report where, in terms of learning, you came out extremely well?
So one of the critical benchmarks that we look at is 3rd grade reading levels.
Right.
There's a lot of data that shows kids who are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they have higher dropout rates and they have long-term poorer results overall just in life. Part of the reason for that is up through 3rd grade, you're learning to read. From 4th grade on, you're reading to learn. And so if you're struggling to read, you can't absorb the material and understand what you're trying to learn. And so it creates a much larger learning deficit as students go through school. And so that's a critical benchmark for students. And so we have amazing teachers in District 20. We have amazing administrators and the support staff there. It's an honor to work with them, to be perfectly honest. I know there's a lot of pushback against teachers right now, but I can say, 95% of them are wonderful people that are there to serve the kids and doing a phenomenal job.
Yes.
As evidenced by, we just hit 82%. So 82% of our 3rd graders district-wide are reading at grade level. And so as much as that's something exciting, that's 18% of students who are falling below that benchmark. And so it's for us as a board to say, great job. We're really excited about this 82% mark. But we need to get these other 18%. And so, as happy as we are and excited as we are about the achievement that we're seeing and the growth that we're seeing in our students,
yes,
there's still work to do. And that's what we're excited about continuing forward with.
Oh my gosh. Well, we do have work, because really that 3rd grade benchmark holds a lot, right? It really holds a lot. And I think that holds a lot whether you can learn, whether that child is experiencing stress, whether that child has someone reading to them, right? There's all kinds of factors that weigh into that.
There are.
But bravo, in the midst of that kind of warfare, where people are like, our kids need this, and you can hold up the 82% and say, no, the prime thing here is learning.
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's what we as a board have, we call our end statements as part of our governance model. And so we have two end statements, 1.1, 1.2. Not that I'm going to bore everyone with that, but it's really focused on academic outcomes and making sure that every student is prepared for whatever they do after graduation, because some kids will go to college, but a lot of kids won't. Some kids won't. Some kids who go to college won't finish, and that's fine. We have a lot of jobs in the technical fields that you can make a wonderful living and never take on the expense of a college education. And so,
which now you and I, oh my goodness, right?
That's a whole different.
We will do that as a podcast: higher ed or bust, or higher ed or not. I don't know, right?
And so I've always been on the track of making sure that everyone understands the opportunities that are available, and not every student is going to be successful in college or needs to.
Right.
And so we as a board look at this, and this isn't just our board currently. This is policy that's gone back for several decades, and that's really focused on whatever students are doing after graduation. We want them to be successful, and they have the skills to do it. The other side of that is we talk about character. We want to make sure that every student has the character to succeed in life, and we have 10 different character traits that we hold up and say these are the traits that we want to make sure every student is tracking towards and every student has instilled in them when they leave. We believe in virtuous character, and we believe that that's part of making sure that society, as we know it in this democratic republic that we have, that we're able to move forward and continue to self-govern the way that we do. We have to have people of moral character and virtuous character to be able to stand up and fight and know what they're doing, stand up for the good of the community, and make sure they don't lose the side of the values of what they're trying to do, and don't give in to scare tactics.
Well, there's enough scare tactics going around at the old school board meetings, right? It's hard sometimes when everybody's yelling to have your voice heard, to actually see clear, right, through that. How do you and your colleagues get that done in the midst of kind of this chaotic, which I think people that come to those meetings are trying to stir up, right?
They are. So we actually get a list of who's speaking and what they're speaking about beforehand. And, when you go to these meetings, if you go to one meeting, you'll see some really angsty people. And I say that on both sides. If you go to 5 or 6 board meetings, you'll see that they're the same 5 or 6 angsty people at every board meeting. And so you understand that there are certain individuals that will support whatever it is that you say. You have individuals who will disagree with you no matter what you say. I've had that happen where me and one of my colleagues say almost verbatim the same thing. They get applause and they just look at me and shake their head like I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm like, we said the same thing. And so you just have to, you understand a lot of the players, the people that come and that, I'm not there. I'm elected to serve the entire community.
Right.
And I get challenged on this from some individuals. They say, but you don't represent me. You don't represent my views. Well, the hard part is if I'm going to paint a wall and I ask you, what color should I paint the wall? You say red. And I go over here and I say, hey, what color should I paint the wall? And they say blue. Okay, I can't paint the wall both red and blue at the same time. At some point, we have to make a decision and go with that. And that's, one of the hard parts of the job is making sure that you understand what your community is looking for that puts you into this role. I was elected here. It wasn't that I just popped up or I wasn't appointed. Right. I was elected by the members of this community because of the values that I hold. I was not shy about my Christian beliefs. I was not shy about what I believe and where I believe this district needs to go. And I still got the support of the majority of the community to get behind me and put me here. And so I have full confidence in the votes that I make, knowing that I was put here for a reason. And so I'm going to vote with that reason.
Let me ask about the upcoming school board elections, which will be in November, right? How many seats are open in your district?
We have 2 seats that are open in District 20.
So incumbent to people to not only be thinking about who would be a good candidate, who would be helpful to the community, who would be strong in standing with what they're doing and knowing why they vote the way they vote. I think you have to have a backbone. You have to have a backbone. You really do. Because if you are in any of these positions to be liked or to be, I don't know, I saw it in the legislature. I'm someone now. Like, nope. No.
No.
You're great, okay? We don't need to be there. to make you feel great. Okay, you don't have to do it.
Right.
It's a whole different thing, and we see that we see that happen. But that to me is the most dangerous if you don't know why you're going to vote the way you're going to vote. Now that doesn't mean how do I say, not approachable. Come, let us reason. Come, let us new information to light. Right? We can figure that out.
Sure. And there's been several times that, when I first was presented something, I was like, absolutely not.
Right.
And then as we talk about it, as we dialogue,
yeah,
I'm going to go, okay, yeah, this is, I get it. And we're good with that.
Right.
But there's other times that you're approached with something, you're going to go, no, we're not going to do that. We're not playing that game. And it doesn't matter what individuals say, because you understand, I understand the greater picture here and what's trying to be done.
Yeah.
And that this proposal isn't the right way to do it. This is going to harm families, or this is going to harm students.
Right. Or does it align with really the majority of the values? I mean, one of the best things I was ever told, and it was when I first got into office, was, hey, vote your district or someone will vote it for you. End of story. I mean, you can, and really our district, this District 20, which was my district, part of it was, we have a highly educated, engaged community, and they want to know what you're thinking. They want to know what in the world. They want to know if you voted a certain way, they want to know why. And so I don't care if it's on your website or whether you hold the town hall, people want to know.
After each of our last 2 meetings, I have had community members reach out to me that I've never met before, but that said, I watched the meeting or I listened in.
Yeah.
You said X, Y, or Z, and frankly, both of them agreed with me. So that was a win. I'll take it.
Take the win.
But you never know who's watching. But to your point, this
Yeah.
is a very engaged district, which speaks to our academic achievement. You said earlier, the number one predictor of academic success is parental involvement.
Yep.
And so we have a very engaged and involved community. I had a lot of people ask me, well, how are you going to do that? Well, you're welcome. I did it. We have very engaged community members
That's
now
right.
and parents. And, frankly, your students are better for it. Whether you agree with me or not, the fact that you are engaged in this, even if we don't agree, makes it better for your students. And they're going to have better academic outcomes because of this.
Yes.
And so that's just one of the great things. Also, it's a blessing and a curse, because you have this involved and engaged community that are watching every word that you say, every move that you make. And in fact, I am sure this will be coming up at a board meeting pretty soon. We'll have some parents that are not happy that I'm talking to you about this right now. But the reality is, this is the battle that we're fighting. And, as much as I love my community and where we are,
right.
my faith is first.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit back and let someone dictate what I can and can't do in my faith.
Right.
And so
no,
that's
we said
why
the same thing when I was in office, really, in the sense of, look, I'm elected here. On my private time, I go to my church, or I go to a meeting, or I go to whatever. And that's just the way it is. And you know what? I think we have to just unapologetically just say, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, what, you're at the Satanic Temple on the weekend or wherever? This is where I am. And, our pastor talks a lot about that. The Kingdom of God Revolution talks about being a blessing within your district or wherever you are living. It's why we do this podcast on how does one get engaged civilly. We can agree to disagree. We don't have to be, we can, go our separate ways and still exist. And we may find commonalities, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, come let us reason. If we can't reason, then, thank you. We'll just agree to disagree. I think some people are really afraid of that.
A lot of people are. And I tell people, I have a lot of friends. Yeah, I mean, as you know, we have some mutual friends that have served in legislature and other elected positions. And I've texted them about stuff and said, I don't think you made the right decision here.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I'm not the one who had that vote.
Right.
He did.
Right.
And we talked about it. We didn't agree. He saw it one way. I saw it another way. And we went separate ways. We're still good friends. We still hang out.
Yeah.
We don't let that get in the way. Now, I still give him a hard time about it because I was right. But that's not the point. The reality is, this society was built on civil discourse and being able to come together, discuss philosophy, discuss policy in a civil way, making decisions, and then moving forward with that.
That's right.
It's one of the things that I appreciate about our founding fathers and how they were able to come together to go through some really difficult ideas and come up with what they did. And the fact that we're able to still carry this on almost 250 years later is really a testament to our society and to our culture being able to keep passing that baton on to the next generation of having civil discourse. I mean, we're seeing it now. I think every generation says this is the worst it's ever been. But we're really at almost an inflection point with society, because we have social media and so many other outlets that we've never had before, where people have opportunities to disagree without having to face someone in person. And it's way easier to sit back from, wherever you are and condemn someone and talk about them from behind the screen when you're kind of in your safe bubble. But that's not how our society was created. Our society was created with men and women getting together in person and having those conversations. And you have to, we have to reach an endpoint. We have to reach an agreement at some level. And whether, you're right, I'm right, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what we're doing. Is that what's best for the people that we serve? Because that's the reality. We're servants here. We're not... there's a title that goes along with it, but everything I do is what I think is in the best interest of the administration, of our parents, of our students, and what can I do to help empower them and make sure that they have what they need to be successful.
Well, I want to encourage everybody. First of all, get on SaveTheStorks.com.org. Support this effort, support what is going on in terms of In His Name, because we need those mobile clinics, and we're not about to have something that was meant for harm. We want to turn it for good, right? I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your courage in just being in this office. It takes courage these days, and which makes me excited about what Pastor Steve is on a sabbatical, and he's actually writing a book about courage and leadership, and I'm so excited because we need it in this hour.
Absolutely.
And I wish I had 10 more of you and Courtney, but there's one Aaron Salt, and I am very happy that you are where you are. I want to thank you for your time today. I know it's tough, but thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.